Good evening. I'm Steve Weberg. I'm with the Public Affairs staff of the Kansas City Public Library, and want to thank you for being with us, particularly with when the weather forecast would make it very easy to not be here. So thank you very much. And let's start with a little Jeopardy, the game show, which I'm sure a few of you, or probably more than a few of you, feel like you're pretty capable of holding your own. For the record, I am not one of them. But so for $800, here's your answer. A few career highlights. He won the Heisman at Auburn, ran for 221 yards in one game for the Raiders, and was an AL All-Star. So this actually came up on a Jeopardy episode last March. 3 contestants, none of them even could buzz in. They didn't have a clue, which was kind of stunning enough to take on a life of its own on Twitter, and I saw a number of kind of snarky news items about it. Who the hell doesn't know Bo Jackson? So Bo, as we all know, was a sports hero who transcended sports. So stunningly gifted at 2 sports, football and baseball, and famously featured in a pretty brilliantly executed Nike campaign. He and his exploits almost became the stuff of myth. All the more so because his athletic career was cut short by injury. As Jeff Pearlman calls him in his book, which he'll talk about tonight, he's the last folk hero. Now, of course, for the 5 seasons that Bo played for the Royals, making the 1989 All-Star game where he hit a memorable 448-foot home run, I think, leadoff home run, literally running up outfield fences as he made catches, snapping bats like matchsticks when he struck out. He was Kansas City's folk hero. And I would suggest from the number of you who've joined us tonight that it speaks to the fact that he still is. I picked Jeff up at the airport last night. He flew in from his home in the Los Angeles area. And on our drive into Kansas City, he asked me if I'd had a chance to read his book. And I had to admit a little sheepishly that I hadn't yet, but I really didn't explain completely why. So I work at a library, right? So the 3 biggest library systems in the city are the Kansas City Public Library and Mid-Continent and Johnson County. And between the 3 of them, they carry nearly 3 dozen copies of The Last Folk Hero. Only all 35 have long been checked out, and there are 78 people on the holds list. I could not get my hands on a copy, at least. I was just about to say I was too cheap to buy one. So, yeah, Bo is still our folk hero, and I think he'll always be larger than life in this city. We get our deepest and most definitive look at him thanks to Jeff's book. Bo talked very briefly to him, 30 minutes, I think, at the start of his work on this project, and then politely declined to really do anything more. He's always been a pretty guarded, close to the vest guy, hard to get to know, even for his teammates as he was going through his careers. So all Jeff did was talk to more than 700 other people about him, the most exhaustively that he has reported one of his books. And believe me, that is saying something. Last Folk Hero is his 10th book. He's written about the 1986 Mets, who were something of a piece of work in winning the World Series that year. He's written about Barry Bonds, Roger Clemens, Walter Payton, Brett Favre, Dallas Cowboys 1990s dynasty. And he's highlighted a couple of different eras of the Los Angeles Lakers. One of them adapted into the HBO series, Winning Time, The Rise of the Lakers Dynasty, which just finished its second season? Okay. And at least 6 times out of those 10 books, it might be more, he's landed on the New York Times bestseller list. Jeff spent close to 7 years as a writer for Sports Illustrated. You might recall a particularly memorable piece he did in 1999 on a former Atlanta Braves pitcher and nutcase, John Rocker. He's also written for New York's Newsday, ESPN.com, Bleacher Report, among other outlets. He's originally from New York. He's a Jets guy, and you may sense a little bit of quarterback envy as he's here in Kansas City. And as I said, he now lives and works in the Kansas City area. He was gracious enough to make the trip halfway across the country to be with us in the middle of winter, temperature at freezing, snow on the way. Oh, and did I tell you, by the way, when I picked him up at the airport last night, he comes off the plane in shorts and flip-flops. Very LA. So Jeff, thank you. It's great to have you here, and would all of you please join me in giving a warm Kansas City welcome to Jeff Pearlman.
All right, thank you. Thanks. Thank you. Appreciate it. You guys can hear me, right? Yeah, okay. I just want to say, first of all, so I used to be, when I was a baseball writer at Sports Illustrated, I would call my wife and I'd be like, Kansas City is great. Like I'd come here, like I did my first Royal story ever was about the best outfield in baseball, which I still think is one of the best outfields I've ever seen. Very briefly, it was Johnny Damon, Jermaine Dye, and Carlos Beltran. And no pitching staff to speak of. I mean, no pitching at all, but they had this great, and it was like Mike Sweeney at first, and Carlos Fables at second, and I remember that team, Randa at third, and it was a great team, but no pitching to speak of. And I would come out here to, am I wrong about that? No, Jose Rodiles, I think was the, yeah, right? What was the starter's name, the number 1 pitcher? Remember, he was an all-star twice. He was like the requisite. No, he was Latin American. Anyway, Jose Rosario. Yeah, it didn't work out. Oh, by the way, I just want to say, I got my Chiefs shirt on. So, yeah. I did that for effect, just to get cheap applause. So I would come out to Kansas City, and I'd call my wife, and I'd be like, Kansas City, this place is great. Like, we should think about moving to Kansas City. But this is my first time here in winter, and I've totally changed my mind. I got off, and I was like, I can't deal with this. Oh, my God, I know. My wife's like, what's the temperature? I'm like, 38. She's like, that doesn't sound that bad. I'm like, it's terrible. I can't. I'm very soft. LA is softened. Oh, I know. I'm flying out tomorrow morning, so yeah. All right, so it's funny. I was looking, the book, The Last Folk Hero, it's my 10th book. I put everything I had into it. I spoke with Bo early on, and it was pretty friendly. And when the book came out, he tweeted something. And he wrote, if someone releases a, quote, unauthorized biography, it means they're using someone else to profit for themselves. Don't be fooled into thinking this is a true representation. And he wrote, if you want to hear the real story, wait for me to release it. And I totally get it. It's a very common sort of thing, and how dare this guy tell my story. And it's funny, a couple of days before my book came out, and I love Bo Jackson, I just want to be clear, like love Bo Jackson, but a couple of days before my book came out, Bo Jackson appeared on the Rich Eisen show. Some of you guys may listen, and he was a guest on the show, and he was great. And Rich Eisen said, what's the most memorable moment from your career? And here's Bo Jackson, right? Harold Reynolds throw, climbing up the wall in Baltimore, All-Star game, he played in a Pro Bowl, he ran over the bars, everything, like all these things. What's the most memorable moment of your career? And he said, oh, that's easy. And he gave the date, so-and-so date, 1990. I was playing for the Royals, we were in Kansas City, we were hosting the Milwaukee Brewers, and I deliberately took a called third strike, screamed at the umpire so I could get thrown out of the game. And then I was able to go, because my daughter had just been born in the hospital. I think it was July 12th, right? It's a beautiful, beautiful story. And he told it, and my book was coming out. This is 5 days before my book was coming out. He was on the Rich Eisen show. It was October 20th last year. And I'm thinking, I don't know. I interviewed 720 people. I've never heard the story. So I go to baseballreference.com and I look at the date, and he said the Royals were hosting the Brewers, and they weren't. They were hosting the Red Sox. But all right, easy mistake, right? Easy mistake. It was the Red Sox. It wasn't the Brewers. And I look, and he's not in the lineup. And I'm thinking, I don't know, maybe he got thrown out before his first ever. And I'm looking, and then I'm like, wait. 4 months earlier, he injured his shoulder, and he wasn't playing for months. He was out for months, so he wasn't even in this game. And then I looked, and he was never thrown out of a baseball game, ever, like literally ever. And he definitely wasn't thrown out when his daughter Morgan was born, when his 2 sons were born. And I just want to be clear, he was not lying. Like, I don't think he was lying. I think memory is a very tricky thing, and we remember things and we forget things, and we, as time passes. And I really think, in a lot of ways, him telling that story made me feel really good about writing a biography, because I think, there is something to be said for researching someone's life. There is something to be said for combing through it. And the thing about Bo Jackson is, to me, he belongs on, I don't know what Mount Rushmore it is besides greatest athletes, but I have 2 kids. My daughter's 19 and a college sophomore. My son is 16 and a high school junior. And if it weren't for me, they would have no idea who Bo Jackson is. And I don't think most kids under 30 have any idea who Bo Jackson is. And I hate that. I hate that. So I really do believe in biographies for the very reason that story, we forget things, and it's important to remember him. And I would say, Bo Jackson is the greatest athlete who's ever lived. There's no close second. I don't care how much you love Tyreek Hill, or how much you love maybe Jim Thorpe, or Carl Lewis, or Deion. There's no close. And I always make this case. This is my case for Bo Jackson. When Bo Jackson was in high school, he went to McAdory High School outside of Birmingham in Bessemer, Alabama. He set a single season record for home runs in a season, 20. It was a single season national high school record. He missed 7 games to run track, right? So he hit 20, set a record, 7 games he was running track. He set 5 individual state track and field records in Alabama, right? He cleared 6'8" on the pole vault, and his high school literally did not own a pole. He would borrow the pole from other schools, right? He won back-to-back state decathlon championships his junior and senior year. He hated distance running so much that he deliberately got so far ahead he wouldn't have to run the 1500, which is the last event. So the scores actually looked deliberately close, but they weren't. He just didn't run the damn 1500. It's ridiculous. His senior year, he won the state decathlon in his sweats. He did not take his sweats off for any of the events, just to mess with the other competitors and basically say, I'm so much better than you that I'm going to win this event wearing sweats. It's utterly preposterous. He won his senior year, he won the state decathlon championship and sprained his ankle on an event. The next day, the baseball team had a state playoff game and they needed a pitcher. Bo Jackson hated pitching, did not pitch a game that year. Started the game, struck out 13 in a win. He goes to Auburn. He runs a 4.1340, right? Which is, I just said Tyreek Hill. Tyreek Hill's probably the fastest guy in the NFL. Tyreek Hill has not sniffed a 4.1340. It's ridiculous. He wins a Heisman Trophy, obviously. He plays baseball. Coming out of high school, he was a second-round pick of the Yankees in the Major League draft. He would have been the number 1 overall pick, but the odds are he wasn't going to sign. He runs a 4.13 at Auburn. All right, he signs with the Raiders. It's just like fiction. He signs with the Raiders. And Tom Flores is the head coach of the Raiders. It was in 1987. And one day he says, Bo, why don't you run the 40? We want to get you in the 40. In pads, on grass. He runs a 4.19. Tom Flores doesn't believe it. He has the trainer, measure it off, and then has him run it again, and he runs a 4.17. In pads. There's no one in the NFL naked running a 4, in track shoes running a 4.17. It's ridiculous how great of an athlete he was. Just otherworldly. And in a lot of ways, I kind of just ramble about different things about Bo, but was anyone here for Bo Jackson's first Major League game? Anyone? No? All right. It was September 1986. He's a call-up, and he's with the Royals. And I'll get into the background of how he ended up here. But Kansas City Royals, Chicago White Sox. And Bo Jackson is called up. He's super raw. He was just at Auburn briefly. He played half a year for the Memphis Chicks, Double-A. He's with the Royals. And his first at-bat is against Steve Carlton. Steve Carlton, one of the all-time great major leaguers, a 4-time Cy Young Award winner, blah, 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 blah. And Jackson comes up, and like it's worth watching this on YouTube. If you've never seen it on YouTube, just put in Bo Jackson first at bat. He looks like a giant muscle in a latex glove. Like he's so, basically like me, you know, he's like so like, I'm just kidding. He's like so buff and like it's all just popping out. Like it's ridiculous. And he has his at bat, he comes up, and it's like Steve Carlton, the greatest pitcher, modern era, right there with Nolan Ryan at the time. And Jackson comes up and he's super loose and he has a 7-pitch at bat. And one of the pitches, he hits a ball and it flies over the left field pole. And he swears it was a home run, but the ump called it foul. Okay, foul. But he does some things that are just crazy. At one point in this at bat, he's just stretching and he takes the bat. If you watch a replay, you see it. And he goes like this with the bat. And then he brings it back, and he does it again. And he doesn't bend his elbows. Like, he just does it because it's him. And at one point, he does this thing that is so insane, any other rookie would get the next ball to his head. He fouls the ball off, and he does this. I swear to God, he does this. Like, he just decides he's going to walk around the plate and the catcher because he can, because he's Bo Jackson, right? I mean, it's so utterly preposterous. You would never do this. Okay, 7th pitch. He's up, and he hits a ground ball to second base. Second base. White Sox second baseman is Tim Hewlett. Tim Hewlett has to run over a little. He fields the ball. He turns a throw. Carlton is covering first, the pitcher, and Bo beats it by 3 steps. So his first ever major league hit is a ground ball to second. Now here's the crazy thing. Behind home plate, all these scouts are sitting there. And Art Stewart, some of you guys might know the name Art Stewart. Yeah, legend around here, great guy, since deceased. And he clocked it. And someone says, Artie, what'd you get? Another scout, bunch of scouts. And Artie's like, I didn't get it right. He's like, what'd you get? He's like, I didn't get it right. He's like, what'd you get? I didn't get it right. Well, Artie, what'd you get? He goes, I got 316. He's like, I got 316. It was the second fastest recorded time in Major League history from home to first for a righty hitter. The only other one was Mickey Mantle, who ran a 315. But I'm really skeptical of that one. Like, because I think Mickey Mantle was like tick, 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 and Bo Jackson's like a digital clock. Like, his first at-bat ever in the major leagues, he ran the second fastest time from home to first. He was so preposterously gifted, it just blows my mind. And that was the one thing, like, do you guys remember Joe Posnanski? He was a commentator. Joe, great guy, great writer. And Joe was the one who originally called him the last folk hero when he was a writer. And I love that. I said to Joe, I'm going to name my book. I'm going to steal your title. It's great. Because, like, he did all these things that nobody ever saw. He did so many things that nobody ever saw. It's not like nowadays. What's the guy's name? The French basketball player right now is going to be the #1 pick. Anyone know? Yeah, something like that, right? You can go on YouTube right now, on Twitter, on TikTok, and you can see video of him, right? He's this guy, he's an 18-year-old, he's kind of a mystery, but you can see, before Shohei Ohtani came to the Angels, you could see him in Japan. You could see him as a 12-year-old in Japan just by going on Twitter. Bo Jackson, there are so many things he did that are just like preposterous. And part of my job in this book was almost like it was like a treasure map of like trying to find out these things. And like perfect example, 2 that I love is he grew up in Alabama and he played at McAdory High School. And everyone kept telling me, they're like, you need to hear about the time he hit a ball so high that by the time it touched grass, he was rounding third base. And I'm like, I'll just be honest, I was like, bullshit, that didn't happen. There's no way that happened. There's no way that happened. And everyone's like, nah, you gotta look into this, you gotta look into it. I swear I was there. And then they're like, you gotta call Eddie Scott. Well, who's Eddie Scott? You gotta call Eddie Scott. Eddie Scott was the left fielder at Fairfield High School in Alabama. He was playing the outfield. All right, I'll call Eddie Scott. I find Eddie Scott, I track down Eddie Scott. He's like, yeah, it's true. He's like, I was playing left field and he hit this ball so preposterous. Eddie Scott ended up playing baseball later on at Stanford. So he played college baseball. He's like, he hit it so high. It went up and it went up and it kept going and kept going and I got under it and I kind of lost it and it plopped down on the grass and I bent over to pick it up and Bo's rounding third and running to home. And I heard that story from 10 different people. Like I heard that story from 10 different people. And then the one that's even better in a lot of ways, all right, it's the first night game. In a lot of ways, the baseball stories actually lend themselves to more myth than football in a weird way. I don't know why, but it's he's playing at Auburn, and it's the first night game at the University of Georgia. So in the history of the University of Georgia, first night game, Foley Field. It's a big deal. Auburn's coming to town. First night game. And behind right field at Auburn right? It wasn't a nice stadium. It was a dumpy stadium with like the big light poles, like a high school light poles. Is a thing called Kudzu Hill. And Kudzu Hill are these vines that grow in the south. Some of you might know about it. And on this hill, yeah, they're paying, right? Yeah. And on this hill behind right field, people would sit and kind of hold on and wrap themselves in the kudzu. And Bo Jackson's playing right field for Auburn. It's the first night game, and the fans are all over him, like all over him. You suck, blah, blah, because he was a celebrity at this point, a college celebrity. You suck, you're a loser, blah, blah, blah. Racial stuff, homophobic stuff, like the worst kind of vibe. Bo Jackson's playing the outfield. And he comes up first at bat, flies outfield, and goes back out to right field. You suck, you're nothing, blah, 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 you suck. Comes up for his second at bat. First night game, Auburn, Georgia history. He hits a ball to left field that slams into the light fixture and falls down. And this is 39 days before The Natural came out in theaters. Literally 39 days before The Natural came out. Jogs back out to the outfield at the end of the inning. The fans do this. All of them stand up and do this. All right, next at bat comes up again, home run. Next at bat comes up again, home run. Last at bat hits a double and they boo him. It's just like, he's just like myth. And the number of people I talked about that game was just infinite. Outfielders and players and coaches and announcers and the whole thing. Chip Carey was the announcer for the University of Georgia team at that time. So it's amazing. And the thing, I worked on this book during COVID, so it was hard. I couldn't travel. I usually really like to travel. And I really got one major trip in for this book. Like, I didn't get to come to Kansas City. I'm from California, but I didn't get to really get the Raider experience. But I did get to go to Alabama. And he's a phenomenal story. Like, he's a phenomenal story. And he's from this, first of all, he's one of 11 kids, right? His mom, Florence, was never married to his dad. And his dad lived across town with his own family, had almost nothing to do with Bo. Bo had you guys might know, had a severe stutter. He was held back a grade. He used to go to school in either his sister, not brother, sister's hand-me-down shoes or just socks, like just socks. And he was a troubled kid. He used to throw rocks at cars. And his nickname is kind of a phenomenal story. And I really worked to track this one down because he talked about how there's a story about he used to beat up a hog and there was a boar hog and Bo is short for boar and it became boar hog. But what really happened is, and I met the farmer's son where this happened, is where he grew up is very rural in the middle of nowhere, Alabama. And he and a bunch of his friends went to a neighbor's farm when they were about 8 years old. I think he was 9 actually, with a bunch of sticks. And they decided they were going to find the biggest hog and beat the crap out of it until it dies, which is disturbingly disgusting and, blah, 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 but it happened. So day after, for 3 straight days, they're showing up at this farmer's yard, just beating up a hog. Finally, the farmer catches them, chases them home, blah, 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 blah. But that's where Bo actually does come from boar hog. So it's boar hog, blah, blah, blah. And he was a really troubled, struggling kid. He wasn't a great student. Back then, it wasn't like back in rural Alabama in the 80s, if you had a severe stutter, they would give you services. They just thought you were dumb. He wasn't dumb, he just blah, blah, blah. But he had this phenomenal athletic ability. And, he really wanted to go to Alabama. Actually, the funny thing is, he's a senior in high school. He really wants to go to Alabama. Alabama doesn't have interest in him. The team that really wants him are the New York Yankees. So the Yankees are coming, and they're scouting him nonstop, and they're hardcore into Bo Jackson. And they're sending a scout, Gus Poulis, to watch him. And Gus Poulis loves Bo Jackson. He's all about Bo Jackson. This guy is special. He's calling George Steinbrenner. He's like, this guy is Mickey Mantle. This guy's Mickey Mantle. I'm telling you, this guy's Mickey Mantle. And meanwhile, Auburn, which really wants him, has a booster shadowing him. So every game, wherever Bo Jackson is playing, Auburn has people basically like this following him everywhere. When his mom would come to games, Auburn would have a booster sitting next to his mom, right, as a bodyguard, basically keeping anyone away. And the Yankees draft Bo in the second round. They take him. And the scout, Gus Poulis, calls Bo Jackson's house to start negotiations. Nobody answers the phone. He calls the coach at Auburn, at McAdory, Bo's high school baseball coach. Hey, can you get us Bo? he doesn't want to talk to you. What do you mean he doesn't want, like with the New York Yankees, what do you mean he doesn't want to talk? No, he doesn't want to talk to you, he doesn't want to talk to you. They offer, he's like, the Yankees literally tell Bo's high school coach, Mr. Steinbrenner wants to fly you and Bo to New York to watch the Yankees and the Red Sox. Bo's like, yeah, I don't want to do that. Bo Jackson didn't even know the Yankees and the Red Sox were rivals. Like, he didn't know anything about anything. I don't want to do that, I don't want to do that. The scout flies down to Alabama, knocks on his door. They won't let him in the house. Like, literally, they're like, we're not doing this. And it was important to Bo's mom that he go to college. He would have been the first person to go to a four-year school. But it was also, Auburn was all about getting Bo Jackson. And there was definitely money, you know, it was the SEC back then. There was definitely money involved and things like that. And yeah, is that surprising? Is that shocking? Shocking, I am shocked. My favorite thing is he goes to Auburn, obviously has this amazing career. And, you know, he's coming out, he's a senior at Auburn, and the Tampa Bay Buccaneers have the #1 pick in the NFL draft, right? Tampa Bay Buccaneers, horrible. They're 2-14, they stink, their coach is Lehman Bennett, and they're terrible. But they do have the #1 pick in the draft. And Bo's senior year, he's playing baseball at Auburn, and the Tampa Bay Buccaneers want to fly him on an off day to Tampa Bay just to take a physical before the draft. So Bo has this guy, he's kind of an agent, he was the booster looking out for him, they both say it's okay. Well, Bo flies to Tampa Bay, and he gets his physical. And the head coach of the baseball team at Auburn is Hal Baird. And one of the players, Bo is late to the next baseball game, and one of the players says, or Hal Baird says to a player, where's Bo? And the player's like, he flew to Tampa Bay to get a physical? He did what? He flew to Tampa Bay, the Bucs flew him there. He did what? So Bo comes back, and Hal Baird is like, they have a game that night against Alabama Birmingham, and Hal Baird is like, Bo, please tell me you were not on the Buccaneers jet. And he's like, yeah, I was, but they cleared it. And he's like, no, you like, your eligibility is done. Like, you can't play anymore. And they called the SEC, and the SEC said he can't play anymore. He violated rules. It's so stupid. Like, the SEC, all these football players are getting paid. Like, every school was paying guys left and right. And they basically disqualified this kid for making a mistake. I mean, it was really crap. I mean, Bo was getting paid too, so it's not. But, like, it's really garbage. So, okay, this is the best part. The NFL draft comes, and the Tampa Bay Buccaneers have the #1 pick. And Bo Jackson has basically said, F the Buccaneers. I'm never signing with that team. I'm never playing with that team. But the owner is this idiot named Hugh Culverhouse, owner of the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. And he's like, nah, he'll want to play here. You know, definitely want to play here. And the coach of the Bucs, Lehman Bennett, is like, I don't know if we should draft him. Like, I don't think he's going to play here. And the owner's like, nah, he'll play. We'll offer him money. He'll want to play NFL, blah, blah. Well, the NFL draft comes. And Tampa Bay Buccaneers with #1 pick, 1985 NFL draft select Bo Jackson, running back, Auburn University. And Bo's agents are like, you should go. Just go. They want to fly you in. Go talk to the Buccaneers. Go in. So it's one of my favorite parts of the book. He flies to Tampa Bay to meet with the Bucs, but he hates he blames them specifically for ruining this all for him. But he goes. And Steve Young was a quarterback with the Buccaneers at the time, the great Steve Young. And Hugh Culverhouse, the owner of the Bucs, says to Steve, he's like, I really want to make an impression on Bo. Let's take him out for dinner. Can we take him out for dinner? Will you come with me, and we'll take him out to a nice steakhouse in Tampa? It'll be great. And Steve Young's like, okay, I'll do that. So they go out to dinner, and Steve told me this story. It's so good. It's Steve Young, Hugh Culverhouse, Bo Jackson. And Culverhouse has this plan. He's like, I'm going to leave you two alone, and you can, woo him on the Bucs. Tell him how great it is here. So Culverhouse is like, I'm going to leave you guys alone. I'm going to, go use the men's room, blah, blah. Hugh Culverhouse leaves. I'll just give a direct quote. Steve Young is like, yeah, so Bo. And Bo goes, Steve, there's no fucking way I'm ever signing here. Just so you know, there's no way there's no way. And Steve Young is like, all right, my work is done. I don't know what else I have to do. And he just like, he was never, and it's funny because the next day, a bunch of the Buccaneer players took him fishing. And Scott Brantley was a linebacker of the Buccaneers. The Bucs were such a joke back then that Scott Brantley said to Bo, he's like, we would love to have you, but this place is a mess. You do not want to come here. So it's interesting. The Royals had a scout named Kenny Gonzalez. Does that name mean anything to anyone? He was a really great scout back in the day here. His son is now a scout with the Royals too. And Kenny knew about Bo very early on, and he was really in with Bo and with his mother. And he kept saying to Art Stewart, he's like, I'm telling you, I think he wants to play baseball. I think he wants to play baseball. And they brought Bo in at one point, and John Sherholtz was the GM of the Royals. And Sherholt said to him directly, he really didn't think Bo was being honest. He thought Bo was just using them for leverage with the Bucks. And Sherholt says to Bo, he's like, I just want you to be honest with me. And Bo was like, sir, I promise you, I want to play baseball. So the draft comes, Major League Draft, June. And Art Stewart's famous line is like, they use all right, trivia question. Who was the first round pick of the Royals that year? Does anyone know? Tony Clemens, shortstop. Exactly. Did not work out. Did not work out well. But Stewart's like, we'll just use if we use a 4th round pick on Bo Jackson, he doesn't sign, it's not going to ruin the organization, right? So they draft Bo, and Bo does not want to play in Tampa Bay. He does not want to play football. And he meets with the Royals, and Richard Woods was Bo's agent, and he's negotiating with the Royals, and he says to them, he said, they were offering him like $980,000, and he said, Bo really wants to be a millionaire. Like, that means something. And you can understand that. Like, he's a kid from nothing, like from absolute abject poverty in the middle of nowhere, and the idea of being a millionaire, being able to say, I'm a millionaire. So the Royals say, do you think that would get him to sign? And he's like, yeah. And they made him, the original contract was $1.028 million. Bo Jackson was a millionaire. And he signs. And actually, he signs, it's a big deal. The Buccaneers are like, oh, I guess, you call it, like, I guess he's not coming here, is he not? And he goes to play, he has this amazing contract. He goes to play for the Memphis Chicks. And he sucks. Like, he's terrible. He's so raw. He goes there, it's a circus. And George Lapidus was the owner of the Memphis Chicks. And he basically saw Bo, it was Double-A baseball. He saw Bo as a cash cow. And he basically, like, every day Bo Jackson would sign up, and there'd be 1 million baseballs for him to sign every single day. He'd have to do, they would do like post-game autograph signing with Bo Jackson. Next day, post-game autograph signing with Bo Jackson. And my favorite thing is I found a bunch of the ball boys for the Memphis Chicks. And one of them told me that Bo taught him how to sign his name. And I just think it's really funny. His name was Danny Zitch. And I think it's really funny that, like, somewhere in Memphis, Tennessee right now, above a fireplace, is like Grandma Molly's beloved baseball signed by Danny Zitch. Like, where'd we go wrong? So, yeah, it's funny. So, that was it. But he was basically a cash cow in Memphis. And once he got hot, though, he got super hot. And he hated everything about Memphis. I liked the players, but he hated the whole experience. And in his contract, there was a guarantee that he would be called up on September 1st. He had to be called up. He wasn't ready, but he had to be called up. And on the day before, he literally just left Memphis. Like, the manager was making, like, that night's lineup, and Bo Jackson is nowhere to be found. The trainer's looking for Bo Jackson. They literally go to his apartment, it's empty. Like, he just left. He's like, I'm done. It's in my contract. I'm gone. And he comes to Kansas City. And he's basically here, and he has this option to play football. And the Royals really don't think he's going to do it. But he always kind of knew he would. And the Raiders took him in the '87 draft. It's an interesting story. Chris Woods was a teammate of his at Auburn. He was a wide receiver, and he recently signed with the Raiders. And Chris Woods told me that Bo called him and said, can you talk to Al Davis and see if he'd be interested in drafting me? And they used a 7th round pick, and they get Bo, and it's utterly ridiculous. And the thing is, the Royals, inside the Royals, so something about Bo that's really funny is, sorry about that, he wasn't beloved by his Royal teammates. Like, it was a real mixed relationship. I don't know have any of you guys ever met Bo? Anyone? No? I don't know why I just did that with my glasses. He's prickly. Like, he's not easy. I don't know if you've ever heard this. Like, you're not gonna walk up to him when he's eating and ask for an autograph, and he's gonna be like, hey buddy, let's take a picture too. Like, he's definitely not that way. He's tough, and he's difficult, and you never know. And he didn't always read things. One thing I forgot is he shows up with the Royals on his first day after he signed, before he went to Memphis, and he had with him, no joke, a stack of autographed photos of himself, and he went around the clubhouse and put one on every player's stool. So you're like Frank White, you're like Willie Wilson, you're like Jim Sundberg, and Hal McRae was the team's 40-year-old DH, and he literally was following Bo around, picking them up and going like this, and it's raining Bo Jackson photos, and they're like, what are you doing? You know, like, what are you doing? And George Brett is watching this whole thing, and he actually like is gathering them up and he hangs it up on his thing. Like, it's just like, he just was kind of tone deaf. And when he decided to play football, and he said it was a hobby, that was his line, how football's gonna be a hobby, he endeared himself to nobody. First of all, he didn't endear himself to Kansas City because he was playing for the Raiders. He didn't endear, like you're Willie Wilson, just as an example. Willie Wilson was a great high school football player. He had a scholarship to go to Maryland, and like his contract says he can't play basketball in the offseason, like pickup basketball. You're Frank White. You've been here for a decade. You can't go water skiing in your contract, but we're gonna let Bo Jackson, who's been here for basically a week and a half, play football? Like, that's insane, you know? And when he showed up with the Raiders, it's actually funny, he shows up with the Raiders in '87, and they're all the same way. They're like, hobby? Like, hobby? Really? Like, really, hobby? And it's funny, he showed up in '87, and this was during the end of the NFL strike. '87 was an NFL strike season. And the Raiders had this week where strike players were basically coming, and the other players were returning. I mean, we're going. The strike players are kind of fading away. The players are returning. There were a couple of days where all the players were there together for workouts. And Matt Millen, you guys know Matt Millen is a former announcer and longtime Raider linebacker, told me a great story. He said it was the first day of workouts for the returning players. And there are a lot of scabs still playing, the replacement players. And they're just like, they just want to hammer the scabs. They hate the scabs. So every time some replacement running back gets a ball, bam, you know, another guy, bam, you know, like talking trash to him, the whole thing. So this one running back gets a handoff, and Matt Millen goes to tackle him. He goes whoosh, right by him. Matt Millen goes back to the huddle. He's like, guys, I'm so sorry. I don't know. I'm off. They give it to him again, boom, other way. Matt Millen's like, I don't know what's going on here. And they give it to him a third time, boom. And Matt Millen is like, am I losing a step? Like, I don't know. And Jerry Robinson was another player on the team. And he goes, you dumbass, that's Bo Jackson. And he's like, oh, thank God. Thank God. It's horrible, you know, it's horrible. Yeah, it's really funny. I'll tell you a few little things too. I mean, just like, then we do questions, is how are we on time? Just want to check. Wow, this goes fast. I'll go say that again, 6:45. But it started late, right? It started kind of late. Okay. Some quick highlights here from the Bo Jackson catalog. First of all, to me, the most memorable moment from Bo Jackson's career is not the event he made up or like climbing the wall or whatever. This guy played 2 major league seasons on an artificial hip. And like, do any of you guys have artificial hips? Like, I don't think you could play Major League Baseball. I'm just judging from afar. Wait, but it's even more crazy than that. This is a 1990 artificial hip, right? So I learned more about artificial hips than anyone who doesn't have one could possibly know. Like, the artificial hip Bo Jackson had, the hip was made of plastic and the bolts were made of metal. And it wasn't made for any kind of physical activity. So when you would run, the metal would scrape off the plastic and little shards of plastic would come off into the injury he had, which most of you have probably seen against the Raiders, like his hip was destroyed. It's called avascular necrosis. And basically like the blood supply to your hip stops and the bone dies. And you don't return from that. He played 2 years. When he played his final major league season with the then California Angels, they kept a stretcher in the Angels dugout because they were afraid that his hip could explode at any moment and they might need to like rush out to him. Like, it was terrifying. And when he played, he couldn't stop. Like, if you watch him with the Angels, when he would come after a ball, he kind of have to round off his turns because you couldn't plant anymore, you know? And he played 2 years with an artificial freaking hip, which is just bonkers insane. It's just crazy. It's really crazy. You guys have all seen the video of him running up the wall, which I gotta say, like, it's so utterly, you're a young guy. Have you seen that? Do you know, wait, right behind you. I know you're a young guy. Have you ever seen the video of him running up the wall? Have you ever seen anyone do that before or since? Never, right? It's insane. Like, I always say, like, we'll see another Pat Mahomes, no disrespect. We'll see another Joe Burrow. We'll see another Jamar Chase. We'll see all these guys. Nobody before or since has ever literally run to the wall, run up the wall, run across the wall, run down the wall. And it was in Baltimore, and I talked to a bunch of guys who played for the Orioles at the time. First of all, the wall is not a firm wall. It's not like running up this. It was like a wobbly wall. It's really thin. So it's not easy. And he was so high up that wall that the pitchers in the bullpen behind the wall recoiled because they thought he was coming over, which is insane. Like, it's just freaking insane. He led off the All-Star game with a home run. You guys don't know that. 1989 All-Star game. A couple of things about this I love. Number one, in the booth, calling that first inning, Vin Scully and recently retired President Ronald Reagan, right? It's like the weirdest, like, and it's like, it's this beautiful day in California. Tony La Russa was a manager for the American League team. And the day before the game, he pulled aside Wade Boggs and Bo Jackson, and he said, I talked to Wade Boggs about this. He told me a story. He's like, Bo, I think you should lead off. And he's like, I just think it's a moment. I think it could be a moment. Like, this is a moment. Let's make a moment. And, you know, Bo comes up, and like, Rick Russell, who's 40 years old, is pitching, and he throws this crap sinker, ball one. And the second pitch, to me, it's the most beautiful of all his highlights in a lot of ways. It's like, hits it dead center. It flies over Eric Davis's head playing center field, and it lands on this tarp. And a law student from BYU comes running out, and he looks like he's going to crack his head any moment. He's like, you know, and he finds it, and he holds it up in the air. And this is the amazing part of this, for real. Later that game, fourth inning, Nike was premiering the Bo Nose ad, right? The whole stadium was Bo Nose. Everything was decked out in Bo Nose. The programs had a Bo Nose ad inside. Fourth inning, Nike was doing the big one with Bo Diddley and like Jim Everett, Bo Knows Football, and Michael Jordan, all these guys, Bo Knows. That ad was coming out. So in Manhattan, New York City, not Manhattan, Kansas, that was good, right? In Manhattan, all the Nike executives are watching the game at Mickey Mantle's restaurant, which is located on Central Park, right bordering Central Park. Bo hits that home run, and these Nike executives just go crazy. They're like jumping up and down, high-fiving, like crying, like this. They put everything into this ad, and Bo leads off the game with a home run. And what do you see next? The Bo Knows ad campaign. It was just like the most marvelous, ridiculous, all-time greatest thing ever. So and like, I'll tell one more thing, actually, and that I'll take questions. I loved writing this book. Like, I loved writing this book. I really did. I love Bo Jackson. I do. It's a love letter in a lot of ways to Bo Jackson. And one of my funny moment is I went to Bessemer, Alabama, and I went to where Bo Jackson grew up. And I went to the address. It's middle of nowhere, very rural, very poor. And where he lives, where he grew up, there's an empty lot. And it's covered with like trash and crap and all this stuff. And I'm kind of walking there. It's in the middle of the day. It's, you know, and I'm all by myself. And I see the foundation for the house. I see the foundation. And it's certainly not a historic landmark. It's like a bunch of bricks and broken cans. And I reach down and I take a brick. I take a brick from Bo Jackson's house, right? Again, it's not like taking like, you know, it's not like going to like the Nixon Museum and like stealing pen. You know, it's like just like a brick. And I have this brick, and I call my wife, and I'm like, I got a brick. And she's like, why? You know, what? And I'm like, no, because it's cool. It's a brick from Bo Jackson's house. She's like, I don't know. And I go to the airport, and I'm so happy I have this brick. And my bag goes to the TSA, and they pull the bag aside. And I'm like, they're like, sir, what is this in your bag? And they're looking at the brick, and I'm like, oh, it's a brick. It's a brick. And he's like, sir, you can't travel with a brick in your bag. And I'm like, well, it's Bo Jackson's from Bo Jackson's house. And he's like, Marge, come here, Marge. And Marge comes over, I don't remember her name, and she's like, yeah. And I'm like, do you know who Bo Jackson is? And she's like, yeah. And I'm like, well, I'm writing this book, Bo, blah, blah, blah. I got this brick in the house, and I found it. And my wife thinks it's dumb, but brick. And she's like, all right, go ahead. And on my desk in California is Bo Jackson's brick sitting there inexplicably. So anyway, do you want to do questions, or did that go long enough? Or?
Thanks, Jeff.
Yeah, all right.
So we've got 2 microphones.
Thank you.
Is that for me? No.
You're doing a great job.
So we've got 2 microphones, and we will ask you to use those microphones. If anybody shouts out from the audience, Jeff has been instructed to treat you like you're Joe Burrow. Okay?
Wait, can I ask you a question real quick? I know I'm going to regret this. Wait, how many of you are Chiefs fans, by a show of hands? All right, I have a serious question. I'm honestly wondering, just be honest. How many of you are like very confident the Chiefs are going to win this game? No. Yeah. How many of you think the Chiefs are going to lose this game? Yeah. I know, it sucks. That really sucks. Also, I hate to say this. I'm not saying like Chiefs are good. Bengals are really good. Like they are really good, like factually. Like they're just. I agree. I got Zach Wilson as my quarterback, man. I got nothing to say in this conversation.
That's the quarterback envy I was talking about.
Yeah, it's terrible.
So,
Yeah.
Questions right here?
Okay, hey, Jeff, I really have enjoyed your books, and I really enjoyed, I just read Gunslinger. I really enjoyed that book, and also Sweetness.
Thank you.
Just so a couple plugs for your prior works. They're really entertaining. But I'm looking forward to reading this book. But I wonder, like with Gunslinger, the book about Brett Favre, you really didn't have an opportunity to interview Brett Favre, and it sounds like for this one, you didn't get an opportunity to talk to Bo much. I think you said a half hour. So I wonder, can you talk about the challenge of doing a biography when your subject is alive and they either don't want to talk to you or you just can't arrange it?
Great question. Wait, first I have a funny story, Brett Favre related. By the way, there's a segment on Brett Favre on Real Sports that I think is not pretty about Mississippi. And anyway, if you guys aren't following Brett Favre, it's kind of crazy. Are you following Brett Favre? Yes. Yeah, it's no good. Wait, this is the weirdest thing, one of the weirdest things that's ever happened to me. This is an answer to your question part. I was working on this Brett Favre book. Brett Favre's from Mississippi. He's from the Kill, Mississippi, middle of nowhere. And I didn't know if he was going to talk to me yet, but I DM'd him his sister Brandy randomly. I was like, hey, my name's Jeff Pearlman. I'm working on a book on Brett Favre. And I would love to interview you. I'm coming down to Mississippi. And she said, well, DM me, this is over Facebook, when you're here, and we'll see. So I DM her and I said, hey, would you want to meet for coffee? And she goes, well, why didn't you just come by the house? Me and Mom are at the house. This is Brett Favre's sister, Brett Favre's mom. And I'm like, okay. So I go to the house and it's Brett Favre's mom, Benita, who I freaking love, his sister Brandy. And Benita says to me, so is Brett helping you with this book? And I said, I don't know, he hasn't yet, I don't know. And she goes, all right, what do you want to know? And basically for the next 3 hours, I hung out with Brett Favre, and Brett Favre's mom, no joke, sent me home with scrapbooks. Like literally sent me home with scrapbooks. And I called my wife, and I'm like, you're not gonna believe this, blah, blah, blah. And she's like, don't you think that's a little weird? And I'm like, no, why? And she's like, don't you think that's a little weird? And then later I was like, yeah, that's a little weird, but still. Someone gave me advice, this is gonna sound callous, but I don't mean it this way. When someone doesn't talk to you, you kind of think of it like they're deceased. I don't mean it like you're happy, you're not rooting for anyone's death, but like, it's like, okay, if Bo Jackson is gonna help me, I'm calling everyone. Like I am calling everyone. The first thing I do when I work on a book is I go to eBay and I buy every media guide you can find, and every book you can find, but every media guide. So I got all the Auburn media guides, baseball, football, everything, and I make a file for every single person, right? And Bo also did me a favor, because when I talked to him, he didn't say, I have a problem with you writing a book. He actually was kind of cool about it. He just said, I'm not gonna help you. So that allowed me to say, when people are like, does Bo know you're working on it? I could say, yeah, he does know. Like, that's fair. I mean, he does know, like he knew. It's not lying or anything. If he told me not to, I would tell them, yeah, I would say, he's not. So you just go about it, like you just gotta be dogged. Like I'm working on a book now about, I'm not doing my first non-sports book. It's about Tupac, the rapper Tupac Shakur. And like, he is dead. I mean, I think. And so like, I'm calling everyone. I'm going through every album, every liner notes, everything. It's the same with these athletes. And like, most of the time, they usually just like kind of accept it after a while, and sometimes even embrace it a little bit after a while. You just have to be dogged, just dogged. It's not a great answer, but it's true. Do you want to borrow Brett Favre's scrapbooks? I still have them.
Oh, I'd love to.
No, I don't actually, I'm kidding. I sent them back. Yeah, all right, thank you for reading the books, yeah.
Go to the other side here.
Thank you. Hey, thanks, Jeff. You're a great storyteller.
Oh,
I sure did enjoy myself this evening. So you just mentioned you just only really spent about a half an hour with Bo Jackson. Did you get a feeling during that course of time, like how Bo would make decisions, or was decision making like was there a process at all? I'm just curious about how, some of the decisions in his career makes you wonder in the aftermath. And did you get a feeling like who he relied on, or people?
Well, I wouldn't say for my half-hour conversation.
Yeah.
But I would say like, he was really interesting. He was really a guy who like, he really enjoyed going against what people thought he would do. Like he got a real kick out of that. And like, I think he loved that everyone thought he was gonna play football and he played baseball. I think he loved that people thought he was gonna do this and he would do that. He kept a very, very small circle. He had very few friends. Like He probably keeps in touch with 3 people from baseball. Probably keeps in touch with nobody from football. He just was really guarded and really closed, and he really trusted his instincts. He liked shocking people. You know, he really did. It's kind of weird, but I would say that was his main thing, is he just liked shocking people. Yeah, thank you.
Let's do 2 more questions here, and then Jeff's going to sign copies of the book out front when we finish here. Last I saw, there were maybe a few copies left if you haven't bought one yet and still would like to get one. Okay.
Thanks for showing up in Kansas City in January. We really enjoyed it. So before I came tonight, I was curious of what kind of teammate Bo Jackson was, and I'm perplexed by his locker room antics at the Royals. And was it kind of like, and you're welcome, or was it kind of like, hey guys,
Yeah.
I'm here? Like, I'm just perplexed by why he
He's a weird
did that.
guy.
Could you get in his mind about that?
He's a weird guy. He's a weird guy. He's not a normal, he's not like, this is kind of a funny story, actually, and this relates to it. I talked to a former Raiders lineman. I don't know why his name is escaping my head, but these things happen when you get older. No, wow, good reference, though. Way before his time, though. Nice, though. Greg Townsend was a Raider lineman. And maybe 10 years ago, 15 years ago, Greg Townsend and Bo Jackson were doing an autograph show together in Anaheim, California, the convention center. And Greg Townsend brought with him like a Bo Jackson jersey and a helmet. And they hadn't seen each other in years. And Greg Townsend was like, hey, Bo. And Bo's like, hey, Greg, great to see you. The hug and the handshake and the whole thing. Hey, Bo, would you mind signing these? And Bo's like, yeah, it's fine, but just so you know, I have to charge you. And Greg Townsend's like, wait, what? And he was like, I got to charge you. You know, if I give it to you free, then I have to give it to everyone for free. And Townsend actually paid the $450 and said, his direct quote was, you were an asshole then and you're an asshole now. That's what he said to him. And I just think he was prickly. When he was with the Royals, one thing he used to do, which is just insane, he's a big bow hunter, a very good bow hunter. He would set up a target where you are, walk over here in the clubhouse, and shoot arrows. And the guys would be like, Bo, what are you doing? But he just that's what I'm gonna do. I like shooting arrows, he would sleep during meetings. He just didn't really like meetings. He didn't like practice at all. He hated practice. So when he was done with the Royals, if we're being honest, I don't think that many guys were that upset. They kind of felt like the circus was leaving. Anyway, thank you.
Not to extend this, but would this be a time for the Seitzer story?
Oh, Seitzer story is great. Wait, true story. Do you guys remember Kevin Seitzer?
Oh, yeah.
Third baseman. Did he have a good rep here? Good rep, right?
Yeah, he was kind of a partier, but...
Oh, was he? Yeah. So are we all. No, I'm not. All right, Kevin Seitzer, Bo Jackson, teammates with the Royals. Seitzer was not the most liked guy in the club. He was like the gnat. He was like the guy who would flick your ear and kick your heel, that kind of guy, right? Nothing horrible, but just a pain in the ass. And one day they were underneath the stadium taking BP, and Bo had to leave. It was a hitting group. It was Bill Pacoda, Ed Hearn, Bo Jackson, Kevin Seitzer. And Bo Jackson had to leave the group for a minute, and he comes back, and Seitzer has skipped him in line. And Bo's like, yo, Seitz, it's my turn to hit. And he's like, no, you left, man, you left, blah, blah, blah. Bo's like, are you joking? He's like, you left, man, you left. And Bo starts getting mad, and Seitzer is unrelenting, right? And Bo Jackson grabs Kevin Seitzer by the neck, pins him against the wall, and raises him off the ground. Are you effing, if you ever freaking talk to me this way, and he's like this, and Bo Jackson's arm is a freaking pipe, and he's choking him, and the guys are Kevin Seitzer's eyes are bulging, and they're all like, Bo, Bo, and they're ripping him off. So he finally lets him go, and they go back into the clubhouse, and Seitzer's in the trainer's room on a table, and with ice on his neck. And Bo Jackson walks back, he's furious, he takes a bat and slams it in his locker, he's pissed. And Seitzer later walks up to him, and he's like, hey, Bo, are we good? And Seitzer's like, nah, man, we're not good. You do not mess with me. And he definitely has a presence about him that's you don't want to mess with him. Bo Jackson is incredibly charitable. Recently, I was going to say the shooting, there's always a new one now, but when the Uvalde shooting happened in Texas, Bo very quietly paid for most of the funerals for the families of the victims. He has a Bo Bikes Bama event every year. It's a great charity. He is a good guy. He's just not a warm and cuddly guy. And don't skip him in line when you're taking BP. Yeah.
Final question.
Yeah.
I'm going to cheat a little bit. I got 2 questions. The second question is, how's Bo doing today? How's his hip? First question is kind of a trivia question. When he got hurt in that football game,
Yeah.
he went down. As I recall, O.J. Simpson almost immediately said, that's a serious injury, and everybody else didn't really know. Is that true?
That is
O.J.
true.
Simpson
All right, so Bill Walsh is in the booth. O.J. is a sideline reporter. And Bill Walsh said, it looks like a hip flexor or something. He's like a hip flexor. O.J. Simpson was like, I don't think it's a hip flexor. Like, it looks worse than a hip flexor. He didn't get the exact. Interestingly,
It was more serious.
he did know it was more serious, definitely. You're correct. Amy Trask was an executive with the Raiders. Al Davis had a great record of hiring minorities and women way before anyone else was. Amy Trask was an executive with the Raiders. And she got a call from her sister, who was a doctor, during that game, actually. And she said, how's Bo? And Amy's like, I don't know. She goes, that looks a lot like a vascular necrosis, the way he was put out. She said to Amy, she said, you should write that down and mention it to Al Davis. And that was actually what it was a vascular necrosis. Wait, what was your second part? I'm sorry.
How's Bo doing today? How's his hip?
All right, so Bo now has 2 fake hips, artificial hips. He lives in Burr Ridge, Illinois, although I think he just recently moved to Alabama, actually back to Alabama. He's great. He's like this suburban dad. He has 3 adult kids. He has a lot of businesses. He's done really well. He tried acting briefly. He was in a really bad John Grisham movie called The Chamber, but he was actually pretty good in it. It's funny, one of the actresses in that movie was Layla Rochon, and I interviewed her, and I was like, what do you remember about Bo? And she's like, he had the biggest legs I've ever seen on a human. But yeah, he's in good health, you know. Yeah, yes.
Okay,
Thank you. Thanks.
Jeff, thank you. Thank you all again for being here tonight.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jeff. And he'll sign books out in the lobby. Thanks again. Be safe.